everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about drawing. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Emily, and here on my channel we do product reviews, art tutorials, and we talk about all things watercolor, and today drawing. So if that sounds good to you, hit that subscribe button. All right, today we're discussing perspective. Perspective is one of the most important concepts to understand if you want to learn how to draw realistically. So I'm going to show you this little gem of a book that I have. It looks like an ordinary little school textbook, and that's because it is, but it's by Bruce McIntyre. Bruce McIntyre was actually an illustrator at the Walt Disney Studios from 1937 until 1949, and for many, many years he was teaching kids K through 8 in schools in California how to draw. And he is very much a proponent of the idea that anyone can learn how to draw. So today I want to show you guys this super interesting concept called the 7 Laws of Perspective that I first learned from this book. According to Mr. McIntyre, these 7 ways to draw something can make an object or part of an object appear to be closer or further away. So that's what we're talking about when we say perspective, how close something is, how far away it is. These 7 concepts are surface, size, surface lines, overlapping, shading, density, and foreshortening. So let's talk about this. All right, today I don't have any watercolors in front of me. It is just a piece of paper. This is just a Strathmore. It is a watercolor paper. I'm still using my watercolor supplies because that's like all I have. But I have a pencil, I have an eraser, and this is a really nice water resistant marker that I've been enjoying lately. It's a dark gray. All right, so I'm going to show you this in practice. What do all of these things even mean? So, surface. When something is on a surface, Mr. McIntyre used the example of flowers. You can have something that's a little closer to you or something a little further away just based on where it's placed on the surface. So we'll use those flowers as an example again, just because it's an easy concept to kind of see and visualize. So we'll just draw our little flower right here on the surface. And that looks pretty flat and one-dimensional right now, doesn't it? But what if we take another flower and place it a little back on the surface? Or in this case, it's a little higher up on the page. So we'll say that this is the first thing, A, and B is right back here. Right there on the surface of the paper, we've created a look of depth just because we've placed one thing a little higher on the surface. The next one is size. We can very clearly tell that something is closer to us if it's looking larger from our perspective. And if something is further away, it appears smaller. So a great example of that would be animals in a field. You have one animal in the front, right here by the fence. This is Emily's crude attempt to draw a cow. We'll draw something much more detailed later on. Okay, so this is the cow in the front. And then further away in the field, much further away, we see another cow way back there. So there we can clearly see how the size can affect our perspective. The next one is surface lines. This one is a great way to create depth in a drawing, especially if you're not really working with a lot of shading yet. So Mr. McIntyre's example was a couple of little legs coming forward. He has this little guy walking with this little belt on. I'm going to do my best to kind of copy him here. And on the surface of his legs, we can't tell which one's front, which one's back right now, right? Because it's just lines. But if we add surface lines, which are these curved shapes like this, now it starts to look like that leg is moving backward. And if we make the curves go up like this, voila, suddenly we can tell that this leg is coming forward, this leg is moving backward. So that is how surface lines can really help define perspective. The next concept is overlapping. A very easy way to portray something being front or behind in perspective is with this concept of overlapping, and Mr. McIntyre used mountains. Very simple. So here is a mountain, and if we have that overlapping another one behind, obviously this one's further away. The next one is my favorite, shading. And shading is very easy to portray on a sphere. If you just draw a circle, it doesn't look like much, but if you add shading on the underside, you can make some of the shading darker, and as it's curving towards the light, you make the shading a little less dark. Wow, this pen is not doing a great job with my shading here. But sure enough, you can see that suddenly it looks three-dimensional. We can tell that the sphere is turning away from us at the bottom, and the light source is coming from here. Forgot to mention A and B. So letter A represents the thing that's closest to us, and B represents something that's further away. And here we can see through shading that the front of the sphere is closest to us, and the sides of the sphere turning away are further away. The next concept is density. This one's a little trickier to understand, but think about when you're stepping outside and you're looking at your neighborhood or you're looking at a landscape in front of you. All of the objects that are closest to you, like the trees and the grass, are very clear. You can see a lot of details in them. You see a lot of density in those details, and the things that are furthest away are more faded out and generally lighter in value. Mr. McIntyre's example of that was these two hills. We'll just draw these. They look like the big rocks on Cannon Beach. And so the one that's closest to us, we're going to fill it in and make it really dense with a lot of shading. And the one further away, we aren't going to make it as dense. And that one, you can tell, is further away because of the density. All right, and then the very last thing is called foreshortening. This one is one of the hardest things to capture when you're first learning how to draw. Let's take my little candle here, for example, that's sitting on my desk. It's just a round candle, and the temptation would be to just draw it like a circle, right? Well, if you want it to look three-dimensional and to give it some sense of perspective, add some foreshortening. So instead of drawing the circle straight up and down like this, let's tilt it like this, and you can see suddenly that looks narrower, and so your circle looks more like that, and then you can give it that width around it. And so we can tell, because of this foreshortened effect, that point A right here, the front side of the candle, is closer to us, and way back here, the back side of the candle is further away because we foreshortened it. All right, so we're going to take all 7 of these concepts and put them into practice in a single drawing. First, let me show you Mr. McIntyre's example because it's a really good example of how to use all 7 of these. He did a donut right here, and so when we're talking about surface, you can see the near part of the donut is closer, or a little lower on the page, I should say, and the far part is a little higher on the page, just like we saw in this example. The back part of the donut is smaller in size than the front, and that shows us with size how you can create perspective. And then with surface lines, he's used those all the way around the donut to show the roundness of the shape and how some of these curves are moving away from us, and that gives us a hint that that's receding in space. And then with overlapping, you can see the front part of the donut overlaps the back part of the donut. Definitely he used lots of shading and density. There are fewer lines here in the back and more in the front to show the density. This is further away. And then of course foreshortening, instead of just a straight up and down rounded donut shape, he put it in a foreshortened position so we can see less of the back and more of the front. And so that is a great, very clear example of using all 7 of these laws in a single drawing. I'm going to just draw a little piglet. I'm going to use pencil and pen. I will explain how I'm using all 7 of these concepts within the drawing. Alright, so here's the finished drawing, and sure enough you can see with surface I put the back feet a little higher on the page than the front feet, and that shows the perspective, how the back part of the pig is further away and the front part of the pig is closer. We used size. The back legs are smaller than the front legs, and in real life of course a pig's back legs aren't spindly and little like that. They're all the same size. We used surface lines. You can see I use those on the legs to show the direction and the curvature of the legs. And overlapping, I use that in the front leg, in the belly, overlapping the space behind it. We use lots of shading and of course density. I included much more details here in the front, and in the back of the pig, less detail. It's less dense in the lines that I drew. If I had filled that all in with tons of lines, it would come forward instead of recede. We don't want that. And then of course foreshortening. A pig, if you're looking at it from the side, would not look like this. It would look much more symmetrical, but when you're foreshortening something, you can see that the body is a lot smaller, the distance between these shapes is much shorter, and that really helps us see this pig in perspective. We can just imagine the setting, and we can tell without a doubt that the back end of the pig is further away and the front of the pig is closer. I hope you were able to pick up some really helpful tips from this little drawing lesson on perspective. I'm going to leave a link in the description to this book. I just purchased it on Amazon. Hopefully it's still available, but what a little gem of a textbook if you want to learn how to improve your drawing skills. So make sure to check that out. Let me know in the comments if you would like to see more drawing videos like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.